Well, here we are at Mindfully Gay.
Hello.
And we really could use people's suggestions on topics. But we were having a conversation, last week?
Yeah.
Talking about potential topics. And we landed on this one about fear.
Yeah.
But we haven't really talked a whole lot about it, so I'm afraid of what's going to happen.
I'm shaking. I'm already nervous. I'm sweating. Well, there's a few things that we can certainly bring to the table.
We were talking about the election.
Yes. And how people, and maybe we can talk about just our personal reactions to it, but and even in our professions, what people are feeling and bringing to the table, and what we're having to kind of deal with, and how this affects our community, really.
If we had a world map over here, so far I have clients that are moving to Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico, Canada, because of this fear narrative.
Yeah. Right after I had one of my students, he was just up in arms, like, I am out of here. I have dual citizenship in another country. I am out of here. Like, oh, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes, I remember one day I came home from the office and I told Bruce, I said, all my clients are like in this space of fear. And I feel like am I being Pollyanna about this? Am I overshadowing, am I not responding appropriately because everyone else is kind of caught up in the fear place? And that's not to say that I'm happy with the outcome. It's not to say that I don't think that this country is going to be facing some interesting challenges. And I sometimes think what informs me a bit is most of my adult life as a gay person has been spent in the absence of rights and civil rights. And I know who we were as activists. I know who we were as fighting for our cause. And sometimes I miss those days because it brought us together as a community. It strengthened us and built some resiliency. I'm sorry, did someone walk in?
No.
And so, but then I think when we get into the topic of fear, and the low-hanging fruit is what's going to happen to this country come January 20th, 2025, is how much does fear as a factor impact our general existence as queer folks, as gay and transgender men? I think there's variables depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, I think so.
Right? But how much does fear intrude upon the sense of who we are, what we're allowed to be, allowed to do? And how much of that is an addiction? How much of that is an illusion? And how much of that is justified?
Wow. Oh, yeah. Whew, that's huge. Because there's certainly folks who deal with fear, especially like with like you said, the low-hanging fruit and what's happening. A lot of different reactions. Like I just mentioned, fear where it just turns to anger and rage and they want to escape and get out of the situation and almost not want to deal with it. Then I think there's folks, as you talked about, like activism, it's like they're going to go in for the fight. Like, what? This is happening? I'm in. Right?
Yep. We've done this before.
Yeah, we've done this before. I know what to do. Kind of gear up and go. Then there's others, and I think I might even fit into this category. I kind of retreat and kind of hide and watch and just shivering in my, underneath the blanket sometimes and just, what's going to happen? And I think that's a reality too, how folks might deal with fear or how they do their fear, how it manifests and comes out. Yeah. I think for me, it's been interesting because several things have kind of gone through my head. One is, I mean, I'll state, and it's probably pretty obvious, I have a more of a liberal bend towards my me
You are
towards my
kidding.
perspective on certain things. But I think I'm conservative in some other things too. But I think I don't know if it's my temperament or what or what I do as a profession, whether it's yoga or psychotherapy or anything like that. I try to take an approach of kind of sitting in the middle. And although I may take a more liberal side and perspective on things, I want to hear the other side and try to be as open-minded as I can, to just understand and know where folks are coming from and the directions they're going. And so, but in doing that, I want to be mindful of like I went on a trip right after the election, and I was kind of afraid of going to the airport and just being in a crowd and just wondering what's it going to feel like at the airport, just being in crowds, because I was a little fearful of people, talking both sides, and maybe some ruckus will happen in the terminal, in the gate, on the plane, and so with my traveling partner, I said, let's make a promise that we're not going to talk about politics. 'Cause I don't want anything stirred up, and I don't want people to hear my point of view, because I don't want to be a target of any sort, and I don't want to engage in the conversation. So let's kind of lay low. But that's how I was responding to that. But I still, like I was saying, I want to be as open-minded as I can, and see both sides. Okay, my side didn't win. Okay, what does that mean for me? But what does that mean for other folks who did vote in that on that side? And what do they gain? What do they lose? And I want to be, inquisitive about that, and not just shun and push away and you're the bad guy kind of thing. I want to lean in and learn and understand.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm fully there yet, honestly.
We kind of talked about this in the holiday podcast, right? Because the holiday podcast we ended up getting into this process of how do we accommodate or work with various perceptions of who and what's important to us with our families.
Right.
So I'm listening to it and thinking, wow, there's that issue of dialogue that's come up again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to generalize this a little bit as listening to you talk about how you were kind of approaching the stealth mode of politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I'll just ask you personally, but
Yeah.
I think it can be a generalized question.
Sure.
Is that a tactic that's similar to navigating other places and spaces in your life?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going into stealth mode was not necessarily an unfamiliar place.
No.
And then as a gay man, how does that work or not work?
For me, I mean, that stealth mode, and I never really called it that, but I think it fits. I mean, it dates back to when I was a kid, really, and figuring out I'm a little different, and I don't want people to figure out what I am, if I even think, even if I am really this thing that I think I am, and so automatically go into stealth mode, kind of keep things secret and hidden and under wraps. And I think that's kind of been in a way, my MO all through my adulthood, really.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware of it, and I can feel myself doing it. I mean, just like going to the airport that day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that's what I do.
Trench coat, sunglasses.
Yeah, the whole thing, the hat, the fake mustache, the whole 9 yards. Um, generally, do gay folks do that? Well, maybe not all. Like I said, I think there's many categories of how people might respond to something like this. Some are going to be out there kind of on the front lines and up front and vocal and fighting, while others, they might take a stealth mode too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I wonder if that's when I'm thinking about the clients and the people I've spent time with who are kind of like in that place of fear, or there's this anticipation. And I think it's I think those are well educated. I mean, we've done one presidency before. We know what to expect with this guy. On the other hand, I wonder, I sometimes feel like that space of fear becomes a default setting that we're not terribly conscious of. And so consequently, opportunities are often dismissed as unavailable because of fear. And I'll just give you a real basic example. I like to travel. And the first time I went to Peru, and I was telling my parents about going to Peru, they're like, well, why would you do that? And I'm like, what do you mean? Because like to me, it's like, yeah, travel, see the
Great
world,
opportunity,
right?
yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, it's dangerous out there, right? There is this arc that anything outside of the familiar is dangerous and threatening. And so when I've gone to anywhere in the world, and I've been to lots of different places, I wouldn't say, Peru's not known for its unrest, or Mongolia or any of the other places I've been. But I think about my parents' life did not really exist much outside of where they were living. And consequently, I think that's very much informed their worldview as they see it as this, well, what happens in Michigan is how the rest of the world reacts to things and looks at things. And I know kind of exploiting some of those fears in my own life and kind of expanding my worldview has really provided me so much more in terms of options of how to be. Yeah.
I can certainly relate as far as kind of the parental units being very cautious and worrisome. And, if I say like, I'm going to Peru, I'm going to Costa Rica or something like that, it's, that's nice, but why would you go there? And be careful. And who are you going with? And how long are you going to be gone? And I mean, just the whole thing, because it's, and it does come out sometimes. It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous.
Well, you might remember this. I remember it. But as a kid, whenever you heard about Costa Rica, what did you hear about?
I can't remember. I don't know.
Costa Rica was like a drug capital.
Oh.
Like it was just full of drug trafficking.
Right.
And so there was always these tensions around the drug wars that were happening in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I was invited to go to Costa Rica, I kind of paused, like the old narrative was informing me in 20-something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though the narrative that kind of got embedded in my consciousness was from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, how does that, if we look at the present tense of things, how much of our attitudes today are an echo of how we were programmed to see something?
Yes.
Like what I know about Costa Rica is news stations carry news. When Costa Rica doesn't have crime or whatever, right? The narrative of Costa Rica is so much more, now it's a vacation, place to go, and it's about surfing, and it's about the oceans. But you don't ever see it in the news. Say Peru, right? Before we went to Peru, they're having some political discord.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I use that criteria to not go to Peru, I should move out of the United States.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
So and then if I bring that into the narrative of identity
Mm-hmm.
and queerness
Mm.
and our sense of security, and I think we've even talked about this, like, I know for like going to the gym used to be a really scary thing as a gay man.
Hmm.
Because of the narrative of don't get caught, don't get seen, don't be identified as, you're going to get, assaulted, you're going to get, right? I don't think that's the narrative, not in Salt Lake City in 2024.
Not today, no.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And yet, somewhere it plays in my consciousness, and I have to be very deliberate in recalibrating my belief system about certain environments, certain situations. And is this making sense?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, if we sat down and really kind of tracked, what feeds our fears, ultimately it's the unknown. It's what we don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so and because we don't know all the information about a certain thing, we hear from the outside, the external, just different stories and tidbits, and it starts to construct a story or construct a truth that we then believe. And we all have our own belief systems around certain things, like a Costa Rica or a Peru or the gym, right?
Or people.
Or people.
Right? The whole political landscape has been, we should fear transgender people.
Yes.
Immigrants are stealing our jobs. We should fear them.
Mm-hmm.
Stereotypes about race
Yes.
have been built
Yes.
around the idea of being afraid of.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right?
And we've been in a setting for the last almost 10 years of those narratives just being reinforced over and over and over again and voiced quite loudly. And I think gay people, all people, a lot of people are kind of grabbing onto those narratives, right?
Right. And I think our internalized sense of not having conversations like this, in our isolation, we start to buy into the narratives about our own existence.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So how many times have I had, I've never had a straight person do this, but I'll have gay men come in all the time and say, I'm just so tired of gay men. They can't be trusted. I've never had I've never had a straight person come in and say, I've had it with heterosexuals.
right? In that way, right?
but what they're saying is, I've heard this about this community that I happen to belong to.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other narrative, right, is, yeah, I'm gay, but I'm not like
I'm
them.
not like that. Yes, yeah. Right.
Right. It's so, right. And I think with social media, we've gotten out of the face-to-face dialogue and discussions. We're trying to defend ourselves with people who don't know us, but we haven't really gotten into the investment of understanding ourselves in the context of the variety of existence in our community. I think that's the beauty of what I've liked about Mindfully Gay is, Nick, Cole, you, me, and hopefully other people we get to join at the table. None of us have shared a narrative. Like, I didn't grow up in Oakland, California. I'm Caucasian. I'm older. I'm Italian, right? There's all these varieties that kind of inform how we show up in the world.
Right.
And what happens is we sit back in our circles or in our community settings like the clubs, and we may have judgments.
We have judgments.
Or we look at Grindr or Scruff, and that's where we think about, well, am I qualified or am I disqualified? Maybe I'm not as muscular, or I'm too big, or I'm too small, whatever, right? It's just fear just then fuels all this.
Yeah. And social media certainly has influenced that when we look at our community and using, the apps. Gosh, we're just it's a reflection of kind of what's going on generally in the country. But when you kind of take the microscope and just look at our community, gay men, queer men, trans men, etc., we're doing the same thing of, the divisiveness and the othering and categorizing and pigeonholing and the whole, we're doing it.
Well, and the othering, John, I think is so subtle. If I send you a text and say, hey, how are you doing? Hey, you're looking good. And you don't respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, how is that person who doesn't get the response supposed to experience that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Versus I could respond back saying,
Thank you.
thanks. I've had a lot of people say, hey, I like that. And it's like, thanks. That's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now sometimes people are persistent and I'll just say something like, hey, I'm working or I'm at the gym or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Right. But I'm still talking to a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the othering, the ways that we support that, I think we could be so much more creative and kinder to each other.
Definitely.
And supportive to say, hey, you may not be my type, but I value your existence enough to say, hi. I also grew up in a neighborhood that when you drove by your strangers, you went, hi.
Yeah.
Like you waved, you acknowledged, you nodded. People don't do that here in Utah.
No, they don't.
But I'd wave at you, John.
Thank you. I waved back.
I want to tell this story.
Yeah.
Because this was a pretty profound awakening for me around this topic of fear. And I think I've shared it with you before. I've never shared it publicly with the world. But the very first ceremony that I did, actually with psychedelia, was I experienced my own death. Now, remember, I come back from this Mormon history. Drinking has never really been a priority in my life. At that time, I had not even touched marijuana. So I was like a virgin. And so when I took the medicine, it started to kind of take me in. I was just like, I suddenly felt very disorganized. And my first thought was, what have I done?
Oh no. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I started to sink into it and I started to relax into it. And I realized that I was dying in this vision. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, fuck.
Wow.
I didn't mean for that to happen. But what was really interesting, and I think psychically I was laughing. I'll explain what that means here in a minute. But there started to be this list that went through my head of all the things that I worry about.
Oh.
Can I pay the bills? Do I have enough money? What about this? What about that? And it was just this list. Now here I am dying, and I'm.
That's what you're thinking about.
And my sight. I asked Bruce. I said, "Was I laughing during that experience?" He says, "No," but I could feel my spirit body was chuckling, like, "You fool!
Yeah,
you spent all your time worried about these things, right?" And at some point, I felt as if the medicine communicated to me and said, "Do you trust me? Can you let go and trust me?" Of which I thought, okay, shaman, walk your path. And so I let go. And it turned into to be this most amazing, blissful, like my attachment to any fear around death was pretty eliminated in this experience.
Wow.
So much so, I don't know how to explain this. I was not suicidal.
No.
But I really had no inhibitions about the idea that something could kill me.
Sure.
Right? And I started to be really conscious about, like, I put my seatbelt on. My seatbelt is putting on my seatbelt because I'm afraid of dying. Now I wear my seatbelt, right? But I started looking at how I was engaging with the world through this new lens.
Right.
And there was almost like this nonchalant, like, yeah, whatever, I could die. I feel so much so that one day I had to kind of sit down with myself and say, okay, you need to deliberately make the decision to be alive.
Mm.
So it's like a few days after the ceremony, right? I'm having to have this talk with myself saying, don't be nonchalant or casual about this. Deliberately choose to be alive.
Wow.
Now, of course, I still interact with these narratives around fear, but there was something incredibly liberating. And it was very conscious building in terms of, why would I put my energies why would I waste breath and heartbeats on whether or not I can pay a bill? What if I did as the medicine and put myself into this place of trust? What if I stepped into my magic and embraced some sense of confidence that somehow things will take care of itself?
Yeah.
And I have found that to be an incredibly infectious way to live, right? Like I'm always kind of looking at the possibility and the potential. I think that's why I'm not happy about how the election turned out. I think the country made a mistake. Guess what? Not the first one the country has
Not
made.
the first time, right.
We have done some pretty devastating things in our history. Colonization, slavery,
right.
Richard Nixon. I mean, we've done this before.
We can go on and on as far as that list, yeah.
And I would even argue that in every one of those cases, at some point, we've had to kind of rise above that and move to the place of greatness. Maybe this is going to be a laborious moment for the future of our country to fully embrace democracy, to go to great lengths to defend it. But for me personally, it's hard for me to engage. Like, I'm on this texting thread, and every text is trying to quote every news article that's talking about the tragedies that are happening to, people in our community. And it's interesting to suggest that we have the capacity, we would rather see ourselves as martyrs than potential gladiators of the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but there was something about that experience. And the lesson of it was, do I appreciate life to the capacity of consciously stepping into each moment and each opportunity as it presents itself?
Yeah. That's how I'm hearing it. I'm hearing you in your personal experience with that journey, that you had to come out. When you came out of it, you made a conscious decision to live.
Yeah.
And live with, and you even said this last year, I think, I'm going to live in joy.
Yeah.
And embrace joy and happiness, and put on that cloak of, the potential and what's possible for me and my community and my world. And I think that what I'm hearing is we need to ask that of our community.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting and wallowing in the pain and the hurt and the sorrow and the things that we potentially have lost. Okay. Once you've done that, because I certainly want to honor people's decisions to do that, real feelings, right? But what do you do after that? Do you just stay in that muddledness,
right,
and just kind of waddle around and, oh, woe is me? Or, somehow, maybe with some friends, with some help, talking, get yourself out of that space and see what your potential is and your gifts and talents and strengths that you've always had that you can now put to good use now that we're in this situation.
Yeah.
Have the consciousness to live.
Yes. Like, we're so worried about losing these rights,
Mm-hmm.
which I think would be very difficult for us to lose.
Yeah.
But it does beg the question, how strongly do we feel about those rights?
Mm.
What are we willing to do
Mm-hmm.
to support and endorse and nurture those rights?
Right.
Can we do it? Can we get off of the laptops and Facebook, and can we actually go take it to the streets?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then I would also argue, wow, what would it be like for us to consciously be in community with each other, to voice our processes together
Yeah.
collectively in community,
Yes.
to nurture each other, to
Mhm.
hold each other up.
Exactly.
Give me that app.
Yeah. Give me that app. Exactly. Where's that app? Exactly. Oh my gosh. Because if we're just kind of going back to what you said a little earlier, if we're walking around either consciously or subconsciously or even unconsciously that we don't deserve these rights,
I'm a victim.
then we just stay in victim mode.
Yeah. I'm
And
a
then we're like,
martyr.
well, if they're going to take them away, oh well, maybe I just didn't deserve them.
See, you didn't like me after all.
Right. See, and just kind of go with that narrative. Is that the narrative you want?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to get into, I made this argument, I think I mentioned this, when Prop 8 failed in California, I wrote this editorial and I got so much shit for it. It was kind of amazing.
Really?
But it was on our little Queer Spirit page. Remember that?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the argument was that perhaps we were spending too much time trying to convince others of our worthiness when we had not convinced ourselves and appreciated what we bring to the table.
Right. Right. Right.
Right. And we've got creativity, we've got community, and where is that app?
Where's that app? That's gonna be the name of this episode. Where's that app?
Well, if I had the education or something, I would like, how do you take that concept and mobilize it?
Right. Right.
See, and I think, I have someone on Scruff. He's kind of an acquaintance of mine, but I don't know him that well. But we text once or twice a day on Scruff, just back and forth. And it was interesting. In one of our conversations, we were kind of kicking back and forth this concept of, and we're working on this, right? This concept of creating a healing center, a wellness center, where we could bring yoga, mental health, shamanism, nutrition and fitness, meditation,
Right.
To create a community center / wellness center that would nurture
Yes.
the body, mind, spirit. Salt Lake City right now, we're practically without a community center. What a great opportunity to create a space.
Right. Right.
And, we're working on it and, shaking the piggy bank and wanting to see something like that happen. But I think we have opportunities.
Yeah.
I think the thing that holds us back is we're keeping ourselves hostage to old narratives.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, I think, Mindfully Gay has been that platform for communicating the potential and to communicate what our strengths truly are and the gifts that we have and our blessings that we have within us and that are inherent in us as queer people that we can and do offer to the world. And I think in our conversations and with these episodes, I'm hoping that that's what we've been able to deliver, at least have the conversation around it and people are hearing it. So So it's already happening. This is, the acquisition of a space, is kind of the next piece of this.
Yeah.
Because we want to have that space where, we can come on down,
Come see us.
Come
by the
see
way, we're
us.
doing a podcast. Sit down.
Right? Yeah, we have a live studio audience.
You are now a guest.
Right. Yeah, all of that. But you're right. We've gotten stuck in that victim mode, old stories, and woe is me. And if we stay stuck there, then it's gonna manifest into the fears that we've been having.
Yeah.
So
maybe to kind of help bring this around,
mm-hmm.
if I were to take the concept of fear and transmute and transform it into something productive, it would become what?
The first word that came to mind was motivator.
Oh, tell me about that.
That if I'm able to name a fear that I have, like fear of the unknown, what's going to happen? Are my rights going to be taken away? Then I'm then motivated, even though I may be sitting in the fear of it and the worry of it and kind of huddled underneath my blanket. What I'm also doing in that space is preparing and planning. Like, what can I do? What can I do to take care of myself? And how will taking care of myself also help others on the outside, right? And so it gets me thinking about something like the podcast, the work that I do in my yoga classes, the workshops that I do, the retreats and a weekend things that I want to do. So it becomes this motivator thing, because if I'm fearing that I'm just going to crumble away and no one's going to want me because of who I am and what I am, then I want to do something to declare that I'm worthy of being here, and help others along the way. We have a power and a mission and a purpose. And so I feel like if I can step into what I feel like I do best in my yoga work, then that's going to be my platform. So I start brainstorming. I get motivated. What can I do in my yoga classes? What can I do in my men's yoga circles to, help these guys who may need some motivation or need some comforting and community and brotherhood to help them through this process. Not everyone's feeling the same way, but at least there can be a space where their voices are heard and they can feel nurtured and taken care of, and they find ways to take care of themselves. So I can turn my fear into motivation.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I have these C words I like to use, and I'll come to those in a minute, but I thought a couple of questions. If we weren't using the word fear, how would we describe this?
Oh.
I don't know how to describe it without using the place of fear. I might go to the place of anxiety.
Anxiety, unknown.
Uh-huh. Then that's kind of where, so then I think the antidote to fear is a process of knowing and coming to know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And stepping into, if I broaden the concept of knowing into consciousness,
that makes sense.
Awareness,
right?
That liberates my options. Fear does not liberate.
No.
But consciousness invites liberation. And then the C words that I like to use is that I think it takes us to a place of competency.
Competency.
It takes us to a place of creativity.
Love that.
It takes us to a place of consciousness,
Mhm.
a place of caring,
Yes.
self and other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Culpability.
Wow.
I get to be accountable.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Those are all good. I like what you said about if fear is the unknown, then we need to step into a space of knowing.
Yeah.
And when I talked about motivating, I feel motivated, I step into what I know. I know yoga and I know the power of that. And and so if I can step into that power and work it in me and then continue to offer it and teach it and display it, etc., and live it, then I think others can do the same. Because I mean, I can honestly say when with the election stuff before and right after, I kind of went into recluse. I didn't want to watch the news. I didn't want to be informed in any way because was already inundated and I was already shocked because I was shocked. Um, and so, but I knew what I needed to do. It's like, okay, I'm reacting to this,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a little nervous, but I had several things that helped me. One was, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to take care of myself because then that's something that I try to teach and preach in my classes. So I better do it. So that meant no news for a while. Do the things that I love to do, the knowing, the knows, the KNOWs. Um, Good music, writing, cooking, working out, those kinds of things. Eating well, sleeping, just doing the things that are going to nurture me. Yoga, all of those things. Being around good people that can support me. Um, and one voice in particular, and I talk about my mom who can be a worrier, but she was kind of my uplifting voice in all of this. She was so calm, and she just said, it's like, well, here we are, this is what has happened. We talked about even before the election, like, this could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
This is her. This could go either way. I said, yeah, you're right. It really can. And now that it is this way, she was able to say and help settle my mind, really. She says, you know what? We're pretty resilient people, John. We're going to be all right. And that just
Mm-hmm.
softened the heavy load. Like, you're right. We're going to be okay. We know how to get through this. We've done this before,
Mm-hmm.
And in that knowing, I then step into that self-care even more so because I want to be strong enough for myself, but I want to be strong enough for my clients and students because they're struggling and maybe they don't have all the tools in the right spot and whatever to kind of get through this in the same way. So if I can stand up and be that resilient individual, live that, preach that, show that, teach it, maybe they'll grab a nugget of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what your mom said. She was at our house for Thanksgiving. About we're resilient people.
Yeah.
Right. And I know a little bit about your family history. I'm guessing she was talking about family and race issues and what have you.
Yeah.
But that is something that I've been saying to a lot of my clients is we are incredibly resilient and we're a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Like we know how to make things look absurd. And if I were a politician, I would want the gay community to be happy.
Don't mess with us. You better look out.
Because we're gonna make you look bad in drag.
We may have something up our sleeves that you may not.
But I want to, you were talking about the news and stuff like that. And I had this experience. It's not uncommon that people will contact me and they might need some kind of radical healing, right? Maybe they have cancer or they may have something going on in their body or emotional state. And we might do a particular healing lodge or healing sessions with that person.
Right, right.
And a friend said, hey, we need to do this lodge. My friend has all these problems. And and then started to kind of like, they just really felt like I needed to fully understand the nature of the problem. And so they started kind of going through all the symptoms, and it was kind of annoying me. And I just finally said, stop. As the shaman, as the one who's going to be facilitating this healing, the way I conceptualize this is I'm trying to find what might be this person's best possible outcome. And so I want to be able to visualize them whole and healthy and happy and jogging 6 miles a day and working out at the gym and biking and I am visualizing and conceptualizing them in this complete and total health. And then when it comes time to do that work, I want to channel that vision to them.
Right.
And you're just casting an evil spell.
Yes.
You are so committed to the diagnosis, so committed to the litany of problems. I already know where your mind is. I'm not sure you should even be in the lodge. Because what I need you to see, right? And what I've seen with shamans and healers around the world, right, is their capacity to remove themselves from a particular reality to go into a place of spirit.
Right.
And those are different realities. And I, people are so defensive, right? If you try to get them to conceptualize a healthier, more productive, robust way of existing. Oh, no. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead and take that syringe and shoot it up. Right? Because what we have to understand is that the particulars of fear are energetics.
Yes.
They're addictive. But they're only effective if you're in collusion with it.
Correct. Oh, yeah.
And so how dare you collude with a vision of hope and aspiration of forecasting health and healing? Like, how dare you? How rebellious.
Yeah.
Right? Try not to be too fabulous about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Wow.
And I would suggest that anyone listening to this, right, I dare you to sit in a place of meditation. In solution-focused therapy, we often ask the miracle question, which is basically asking someone, if you woke up in the morning and everything was exactly as you wanted it to be, how would you know the miracle happened? How would you be thinking differently, feeling differently? What would you be doing differently? What would it look? And it's interesting how people just want to fall into the deficit.
Right.
And you have to stop them and say, not what you wouldn't be like, well, I wouldn't be doing this. Well, if you weren't doing that, what would you be doing instead?
Right.
Right.
It's hard.
That is wizardly skill 201. Right. Dare to visualize yourself operating in the place of competency and efficiency and happiness. Dare to ask yourself, how are you thinking in that state? How are you experiencing that state? You will put your therapist out of business.
Right?
So,
because we just don't think like that. We just don't think like that.
Yeah.
Because if you even you just posing that question to me, and again, if listeners are taking all of this in, I think my first response is, well, I wouldn't do X, Y, Z, and you would stop me and say, well, no, if you're not doing that, what would you be doing? I might say something on a positive front, but I'll probably negate it. Yes, but. Yes, but. Right? We're so programmed in that way of thinking, seeing, doing, right? And Oof. It's, oh, wow.
Well, and we see it when people come out of the closet, or when they want to transition, or when they want, right? When people start to consider what their authenticity would look like,
Mm-hmm.
it's got a lot of buts in it.
It does. Right.
Thank goodness.
Right?
Yeah. And what I've come to appreciate is it takes a powerful magician to adhere to your own particular reality. I think of someone like Dolly Parton. Everyone loves Dolly Parton.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because her attitude
Mm-hmm.
is that of a powerful magician.
Yeah.
She's not seduced
Mm-mm.
to take it down that path.
Nope.
At least her public persona, right?
Right.
We can all be a little bit like Dolly.
We can all be like Dolly.
What would Dolly do?
What would Dolly do?
Well, and sometimes that's a technique when people are so struggling to some people are so indoctrinated in the problem
Mm-hmm.
that if I ask them what the potential solution, like, I have no idea. It's like, well, if your mom were describing to me the best possible outcome for you, what would your mom want to see?
Oh, there you go.
Right? I don't know anyone who has, well, how do you think Dolly does it? Right? One of my heroes is Helen Keller, and I sometimes think, wow, if Helen
can do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyways, just some tools,
Yeah, and
some
that's a good one.
practical, people could just take a few notes on this and take it to your meditation and just contemplate, wow, what would that look like?
Mm-hmm. I like that. And I know another little tool, and it's kind of in the same vein of, thinking about people like a Dolly Parton, where she doesn't take that attitude of I can't or I won't, and just has this, this wizardly approach to being in the world and doing herself. I think that, it's a good tool. Something that I do, I watch motivating shows.
Yeah.
I like some reality shows, and the reality shows that I like The Voice, and I'll just stick with that one, just because here's these young singers, or these singers that want to kind of do something with their careers, and you get a nice backstory, and it's endearing. You kind of get drawn into maybe the struggles that they had, but they had the support of their family and friends to kind of pursue their dreams and all of that. And then you get these coaches too, these superstar coaches who are just so on their side and just lifting them up. And I'm just watching the television, just sobbing, but in a good way though, because it feels motivating to me. It's like, They did it. I can do it too. Not that I want to be a singer, but it's giving me something within me to, I can pursue my dreams too.
This is going to sound so corny.
Go for it. Mine was just corny, so I watched The Voice and I love it.
Right now, Wicked is such a powerful musical, right? And the song that everyone is singing, No Wizard That Ever Was, is going to bring me down.
Oh,
right?
Chills.
Basically, that whole song is, I'm stepping into my power.
Hello.
And why is everyone singing that song? Why is it resonating so strongly?
Right.
Because our spirits, whether you're gay, straight, trans, bi, non, whatever, right? The nature of our spirits were built and designed to excel and to be godlike.
Yes.
And so we hear something that triggers that knowing. It wakes it up. Mel Doma say it wakes us up in our bones.
Right.
Because that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that, and don't brush that off as corny. Don't brush that off as, just this trendy thing because this new movie's out. No. It really is tapping into something.
Why is it speaking to you?
Yeah.
And do we listen to The Voice and think, oh, well, they're the exception? Or do we watch that, or do we watch Alphaba and think, that could be me?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah,
Because it can be.
it can be.
All of our greatness will show up in some particular way when we give it permission.
When we give it permission, give it a little space.
It may be as simple as letting someone cut in front of you. It may be as simple as, right now I am trying to accomplish an overhead squat exercise.
Oh, wow.
Well, and when Nick showed it to me, I thought, I'm 60.
There's no way I can do that, right?
Right? There goes my cast spelling, right? And I thought, you know what? The neuroplasticity of my brain and my body, I will accomplish this if I'm fucking 80 years old. It will get done.
Yeah.
And I've been working on it for a couple of weeks now, and it's getting there.
It's getting there,
It's
right?
moving. It's transforming.
Mm.
I'm tapping into something,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are all these. This is what you're supposed to be like if you're gay. This is what you're supposed to be like if you're black. This is what you're supposed to be like if you're old. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Right. And it takes a lot of courage
It does.
to say, "Not my story."
That's not my story.
So,
Or I'm ready to change that story.
yeah.
And I think that's why the podcast is so important. And I think this vision of creating a space so that you can be in community, be in group, be in brotherhood, so you can be influenced by all of this.
Yes.
So you can really not just be in your head about, I don't know, but really hear it from other people. Try it out, as we often say here, like, let's just practice this. Let's just try this on, and support one another on this journey. Hey, did that Wicked movie influence you in a positive way? Oh, but that's just a movie. Really? Really? What did it talk to me about what that really tapped into in you? And, who do you really want to be?
I don't know her name, but the actress who plays Alphaba.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Cynthia Erivo.
What's her name?
Cynthia Erivo.
Okay, yes. There's a meme of her talking about how she got into character. And I haven't seen the movie, but apparently, it flashes back to little Alphaba.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, for me to get into that space, I had to have a conversation with the younger version of myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a powerful exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would John today say to that 14-year-old John,
Mm-hmm.
that 16-year-old John, that 21-year-old John?
Right.
Like, what would you say? And I think about my own life. I remember at 14 and 15 feeling so incredibly trapped. And I don't want to say to that 14, 15, like, wow, you're going to find so much space and so much liberation. And all you have to do is get through this moment so that you can step into the next.
Yeah. Right.
But I thought that was a really powerful exercise.
It really
she
is.
engaged in.
Yeah. It is a really good exercise. And it's another one I think we can suggest our listeners just kind of try it out, try it on for size. And when we do workshops and things like that might be a good exercise for us to do.
Well,
right?
And what would John today at 48?
Thank you.
Well, what would John today say to his older self?
Yeah.
Like what does 60-year-old Jerry, what might he want to say to 70-year-old Jerry?
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And I'm thinking, I feel like I've broken through so many barriers about just even being 60. I think, man, 70, you're going to revolutionize that look.
Mm-hmm.
And
for real. For real.
Yeah. So what would my today version, what would be the advice of me today to the advice of myself 10 years from now?
Wow. Love that.
And remember when Charles talked about stepping into our future or forecasting our future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great exercises. I'll even mention, because, the Alphaba story that you just mentioned. If you watch RuPaul's Drag Race, they do that there too. They get the finalists, and it's like the 4 or 3 contestants, and they're going to lip sync for the crown or whatever. One of the questions that RuPaul will ask, or to the last contestants is, and they show up a little picture. What would you tell 7-year-old Jason? And then the contestant has to talk to.
Bitch, you better work.
Right? And it's so moving. It's so very moving. And I have to guess that it's pretty healing too.
Yeah.
To be able to talk to yourself, talk to that kid, and reacquaint yourself with maybe the struggle or hurt that they may have had at that time, and do some reconciliation and grab them by the hand and and nurture them through all of this, because you made it.
Instead of this fractionalized sense of, I was talking to a client the other day who comes from a really strong LDS background, which I come from, and I was telling him, as much as that was such a struggling time of my life, I want to thank that person for persevering, because it brought me to a particular space that allowed me to receive what is today.
Yes.
That person there was full of fear and anxiety and doubt. But by working through that gauntlet, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at today.
Yeah, I made it. I'm here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So there's our kind of discussion about fear and, what's happening in our country right now. How is it affecting you? Where are you? Where are you sitting right now in your own state of mind, body, spirit? And what are you ready to do now? What are you willing to do? And is there something that you can tap into on your own? I think we're able to kind of do that for ourselves and with ourselves, but not everyone has the capacity to do that. And so ask for help, ask for assistance. It's okay. If you're hurting and it's hard and you feel stuck in the mud, it's okay to reach out. You can reach out to us, just send a text. Is there a resource that I can turn to that can help me get to the next step? Or if you got a family member or friend that you can rely on, that you trust, and they don't judge, talk to that person. We have this power, we have this resiliency to move forward. And if we can do that, not only as individuals, but as a community, we can be a driving force and accept and move through whatever comes our way.
Preach. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on our podcast. Hopefully, I had an individual say to me, they were listening to the podcast and they almost called me because they wanted to keep having the conversation.
I've had that too.
But that's the thing. We want you to have the conversation. We're not here offering solutions. We're here to stir the pot. And so if you like what you're hearing, share it with your friends and break out a big cauldron and create some magic.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.